Hello, and greetings from across the multiverse. There have been many stories which pit Sherlock Holmes, fictional, against Jack the Ripper, factual. Moviegoers are obviously aware of A Study in Terror and, more famously, Murder by Decree. But the multiverse is filled with such encounters between the two. And today I am looking at the Michael Dibdin novel, The Last Sherlock Holmes Story. The premise of this novel is that Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes are real people. Watson is friends with wannabe writer and surgeon Arthur Conan Doyle, and so Watson provides to Conan Doyle material that he can then revise into detective prose. This particular book, where Holmes and Watson meet the Ripper, Watson keeps the manuscript for himself and does not pass it on to Arthur Conan Doyle. Instead, he writes the story and stores it in a vault to be opened in the 1970s, when everyone who's involved with the Ripper case is dead. And we start off with Dr. Watson wondering whether people will remember either Sherlock Holmes or Jack the Ripper. Just to let you know, I will be going into spoiler review later on in this video. When that happens, I will let you know. But for now, we're in non-spoiler territory. Jack the Ripper is identified in this story, and his identity has split people, Sherlockians, into either love it or hate it camp. I'm in the love it camp, but for now, I won't go into it due to spoilers. But this is a book tour de force from Michael Dibdin. As real history says, there were gaps between the murders. Dibdin's skill is to plug those gaps with references to Holmes and Watson solving other cases that were taken from the Arthur Conan Doyle library. It is weird, after reading this particular book and then going back to read the Arthur Conan Doyle stories, knowing that the events depicted there are played with the Jack the Ripper murders in the background. And it is equally fascinating the way that Michael Dibdin brings the Victorian era Whitechapel to life with his not very flattering descriptions of hags and so forth. Probably not the best way of describing things, but probably very apt. Okay, as I've already mentioned, contrary to my normal videos, this one will be very spoilerific, and the spoilers will start from here. The twist is so breathtaking that I just can't let it go. As the caption says, this segment will have spoilers. If you haven't read the book or listened to the audio reading, please stop now. Otherwise, here we go. The audacity of reliving the Conan Doyle stories here, yet knowing that Holmes is Moriarty, who's the Ripper, is just breathtaking. But this is turned on its head as Holmes sees Watson taking cocaine and presume that Moriarty has killed the real Watson and is impersonating him. Thus, the man standing before him is the Ripper. On first reading, as a teenager, it totally gripped me. Reading it again, it still does. The way that the two friends watch each other with fear and suspicion. The way that we relive the famous Holmes-Moriarty battle at the Reichenbach Falls, but with a fresh eyes and a fresh view. Remember, we are reading this book from Dr. Watson's point of view. Therefore, we know that Watson is real and not an impersonation by Moriarty. But Holmes is definite that Moriarty has killed his friend, Dr. Watson, and it's now plaguing him. But the real question is Professor Moriarty actually there? Does he really exist? And that is not a silly question. Until the death of Mary Kelly, the story reads pretty much as expected. But when Watson sees Kelly's mutilation by Holmes, a darker, nastier story springs to life. By interweaving the Conan Doyle stories in the narrative, it brings the events closer to home. I do understand why many Sherlockians don't like this book, and especially its conclusion. But the way that we both get a resolution to the Ripper murders and yet we don't is remarkable, and for me it's totally out there. I am drawn into this world, one in which we get no definitive answer except perhaps the knowledge that the killings do stop. So, was it Holmes? Remember, Watson tells us that he fell asleep at the crucial point. He never saw Holmes kill Mary Kelly. But what reason would he have in mutilating her body? But was it Holmes anyway? Watson admits to losing him in the back streets. And the figure that Watson sees coming out of the shadows was Holmes, but he was far shorter and with a moustache. So could it be a question of mistaken identity? But equally, as we know, Sherlock Holmes is a master of disguise, remember? And was Holmes thinking straight at this period in his life? He believes Watson to be fake based on Watson dragging himself to keep up with Holmes's erratic trip across Europe. But we're reading this in Dr. Watson's voice, his perspective. And Moriarty, did he play Holmes and Watson like puppets? After all, he is the Napoleon of crime. We never see him, but he is always just out of sight, orchestrating the death of his nemesis, Sherlock Holmes. So many questions that are left unanswered, but a good story is one where you invest yourself into it and you never want it to end and you just want to keep it going on and on and on and on. And this is such a story for me, which is why I thoroughly recommend it. And so those are my views on this book. If you've read it or listened to the audio play, I'd like to hear your take on it, whether you like it or not. But until next time, may your news be good news and happy times and places. Farewell.